welcome to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. I'm your host, Louis Padian. I hope that you're doing well and are enjoying the podcast and the topics we've covered so far. These podcasts are released every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, so be sure to subscribe wherever you are listening to be kept up to date. So today we'll be covering dietary fats, or fat as people might commonly refer to it, as I thought it'd be really important to give a bit more of a balanced perspective in general to this nutritional topic. So fats are often something that's obsessed with or feared amongst some people. We get people who promote really high fat diets and people who suggest cutting fats out of your diet, that fat makes you fat. And we have those two camps that are opposing views. And I think it's really important, as we've done with carbohydrates, as we've done with proteins, as we've done with fibre as well, is giving you a bit of a backstory to inform you of potentially a more balanced approach to fat in general within the diet. So today we'll be covering, as part of this mini-series, what are dietary fats, what do dietary fats actually do within the body, and are dietary fats essential to your diet? So first of all, we'll cover what are fats. And before we actually get into this, I think it's really important, as it's not clear cut in a lot of the research recommendations around dietary fat, and that's something that we'll be delving a bit more into, and you'll probably hear a lot of ifs, buts and maybes in the things that I talk about today, which will hopefully give you a bit more understanding of why we can't give blanket recommendations around fat. But right, we'll get into it. What are fats? So fats are also known as lipids, is something you might have heard people call them, and they're one of the three main macronutrients: protein, fats and carbohydrates. As we've already covered two of them already, this will round off the series of macronutrients. And the main thing that people often refer to dietary fat for is an abundant energy source. So as we've spoken about previously, carbohydrates per gram offer 4 calories, proteins offer 4 calories as well. Fats per gram give 9 calories, so a huge abundant energy source, over double what the other two offer. But when we get into fats, not all fats are created equal or do the same thing. So there's going to be lots of different subcategories of fats that you've probably heard of, and hopefully will give you a bit more perspective around what we're actually referring to. So first of all, we have saturated fats, and these are typically found in animal products like red meat, whole fat dairy, and oils such as coconut and palm oil. And a really good way to distinguish between a saturated fat and an unsaturated fat, especially in the UK, maybe not in warmer temperatures because it might not be as clear cut, is that saturated fats are usually solid at room temperature, while unsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature. So some saturated fats are beneficial for our health, that's definitely sure, but excessive consumption is often associated with increased LDL cholesterol, which is what we'd sort of quote unquote call bad cholesterol, and an increased risk of heart disease, stroke and type 2 diabetes, which is obviously not ideal. Now we move on to the unsaturated fats group as well, which, like I said, is usually liquid at room temperature and often sort of considered one of the healthier options. So unsaturated fats have been shown to lower risk of heart disease, stroke and type 2 diabetes, and these can be sort of broken down into more subcategories, but it's really interesting that we talk about fats as a whole being good or bad, but actually in fats themselves, we've got saturated fats, which is associated with an increased risk of heart disease, stroke and type 2 diabetes. However, unsaturated fats on the whole are associated with the exact opposite. And that's really interesting when we sort of look at it as a whole, actually get down into it. There's really huge differentials in the quality or types of fat within the diet. But when we talk about unsaturated fats, there's different types of unsaturated fats as well. Ones that you've probably heard of, people talking about, and again, different roles appear in different foods. So first up, we have monounsaturated fats, and these are found in sort of things like olive oils, avocados, nuts, and associated with low risk of heart disease. Then you might have your polyunsaturated fats, which tend to sort of refer to as omega-3s and omega-6 fatty acids. And these play the role in the body of around brain function, cell membranes, and regulating sort of inflammation within the body. And you might have heard of fish oils. People might use them, like supplement with them, ones that I take personally. And that's rich in omega-3 fatty acids. And their omega-3 can be taken from the diet as well. So if you're having 2 servings of oily fish per week, you usually say that's meeting the recommendations. And oily fish, we're talking about salmon, sardines and tuna. And these have huge benefits for heart health and reduction of CVD long term as well. One of the unsaturated fats that's often not categorized as an unsaturated fat because it has pretty bad reputation, rightfully so, is trans fats. And this is what we would call, and often we would advise people cutting and removing from the diet as much as they can. And this is a type of unsaturated fat, but it's mainly produced by humans. It is found in very small amounts within meats already, but it's something that we've manufactured. And the reason that we manufactured it, a huge part of it was to improve shelf life of products, which I believe was done with the best intentions. However, when we look at the research, it's not good. So trans fats found in mainly processed foods and baked goods, fried foods, and things like margarine. And these have been shown to raise your LDL cholesterol and lower your HDL cholesterol. So LDL will be your bad cholesterol, and HDL will be your good cholesterol. So again, not good. So when we talk about unsaturated fats, on the whole, really, really positive thing. However, if we do include trans fats within that, I would say steer clear of trans fats as much as you can, but increasing the amount of unsaturated fat within your diet, within your monounsaturated fats and your polyunsaturated fats, will be beneficial. So as you can see, there's a lot of nuance in this, a lot of information to take in. There is no clear-cut instruction around it all. But we've touched on a bit of this already, and I think it's really important to actually understand what dietary fat actually does. So beyond providing energy, fats play a multitude of roles within the body. As I've said, energy source, they're abundant, 9 calories per gram, but they also help us absorb fat-soluble vitamins, which are A, D, E, and K. They also provide cushioning and protection against our organs and contribute to hormone production as well. And this is something that we see when people have really low body fat levels. So people who are dieting for competitions, things like that, they tend to see a drop in their libido, their sex hormones, but also they might find that their feet ache, they're sitting down, they might be not as comfortable because they haven't got as much body fat on them for cushioning protection generally, but their organs as well will contribute and will be affected from that as well. We're having less body fat around them. We also use fat or have body fat to help regulate our body temperature and for insulation, but also to support brain health and cognitive function as well. So as you can see, it goes beyond just providing energy sources. It's a huge, huge player in health overall, and there's lots of different facets to dietary fat. And again, we'll cover that across this mini series in a lot more depth. But the big question is, do you need dietary fat or do you need fat in your diet? And there's a few things to cover here. So first of all, as we've touched on in previous episodes around across the macronutrients, we have essential amino acids, which amino acids help make up proteins. So we do have essential protein or amino acids that we need within our diet because we can't produce them ourselves. We don't have essential carbohydrates, but I would argue that people with very low carbohydrate intakes on the whole, there's lots of downsides to that regarding health and quality of life. But when we look at the scientific sort of definition, we don't have essential carbohydrates. We do have essential fatty acids or essential fats, which means that we can't produce them in our bodies. So in short, yes, we need them. But also there are some elements of saturated, mono and polyunsaturated fats that we know have to combine together to lead those health outcomes. Too much of one and the balanced approach to dietary fat is really important. We also know that going too low with your fat can cause hormonal issues and vitamin deficiencies with regards to fat-soluble vitamins. And there are some trends with saturated fats, some saturated fats, or most saturated fats, I should say, and trans fats that increased intake of these is associated with cardiovascular disease. So there's a lot of nuance. Combine this with the obesity crisis, and there's no doubt in my mind that some form of increase in dietary fat intake or the quality or type of fat that we're having within our diet has contributed, even in a small way, to the obesity crisis with increased caloric intake and potentially playing a role within that. So in short, in my opinion, yes, a good amount of fat in the diet is really important, but it's not as clear cut as just saying go all in on unsaturated fat, because technically trans fats is included in that. Also, not to avoid saturated fat, because we know that some saturated fats actually have neutral or positive links to health as well. So this is why I wanted to cover this topic, as perhaps it's not just looking at what's the right amount of fat, but actually the type of dietary fat is really important, and finding what's going to work for you, your goals, and what your values are as well. So hopefully today's been a bit of an introduction to dietary fat, but we've covered what are fats, what fats actually do within the body, and are fats essential to your diet. And in the next episode, we'll be covering, will fat help or hinder your weight loss goals? How much fat do you actually need in your diet, or how much would I advise you have? And what are the best sources to get dietary fat? And we'll be looking at some of the research around certain foods and health outcomes as well. So there you have it. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. If you have any questions, queries, or would like to reach out to me, please do. I am at Louis Padian Nutrition, which is at LOUISPADIAN Nutrition on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all other social media platforms. If you're looking for support in achieving your goals and living a healthier, happier, and more balanced life in the process, click the link below and inquire about working with me. Remember to subscribe to the Balanced Approach podcast wherever you're listening for more insightful episodes, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.